Hey guys, this is Matt Arcaini. I'm one of the mix engineers at Soundstripe. So today we're going to be working in DaVinci Resolve's Fairlight, and I'm going to be using some really basic audio plugins such as EQ and compression, which are I would say the fundamental building blocks of mixing. So we'll start off talking about some of the basic tools that you'll need in order to get the most out of your dialogue that you recorded. And we'll be using just effects that are included with Resolve so that, you know, I'm not using something that you don't have. So we've got the dynamics section of the channel strip here in Resolve. So by channel strip, I mean you've got your volume fader, you've got your panning, then right here it says dynamics, and that's going to be your compression and your limiting. And then you've got your equalizer right here, and that will allow you to adjust the frequencies within the vocal and filter things out, accentuate things that you may need to hear more of. And then this plus sign will allow you to drop in different audio plugins, and we're just going to be using plugins from the Fairlight effects menu. And the main one we're going to be using is the Deesser. And you'll see how that plays in when we start using different types of EQ and bringing out different frequencies. So what I have open on the desktop here is the dynamic section of Fairlight, and in that dynamic section is the compressor, which is what we'll be focusing on. And the compressor basically allows you to control the dynamics or the volume of your audio mostly automatically. So when you record anything, you'll have sections of the audio that are quieter, some that are louder, and a lot of times you'll want to make the entire clip sound like it was recorded at the same level. So the compressor helps you do that by making the loud sections a little quieter and the quiet sections a little louder. The three most important things to worry about are the threshold, and the threshold kind of dictates when the compressor kind of springs into action. So when your audio crosses a certain decibel range, the threshold dictates when the compression will, for lack of a better word, clamp down on the audio and make it quieter. The attack parameter dictates how quickly that'll happen. So right now in this scenario, it's set to 1.4 milliseconds. So that means 1.4 milliseconds after the audio crosses the threshold, the compressor will act. And then the release is just that, how quickly the compressor will release off of the audio after the audio dips back below the threshold. So the main reason you'd want to adjust the attack on a compressor is to give the audio that you're compressing a more natural feel, so that when the audio crosses the threshold and triggers the compressor, it's not just immediately getting crushed by the compressor, but it's giving it a second to breathe before it hits. So another parameter you'll want to take note of is the makeup section. And basically when you start using a compressor on your audio, you'll experience a reduction in the overall level. So your makeup section will allow you to return the audio to its original level after you've used the compressor. So if you're getting 10 decibels of reduction, you would want to increase it roughly 10 decibels in order to make up the difference. So what I'm opening right now on the desktop is the equalizer in Fairlight, and that's built right into the channel strip here in the mix window. And basically, equalizers, essentially what they allow you to do is manipulate the frequencies of the audio that you recorded anywhere, but in this case it'll be out in the field. So you can remove low-end frequencies, remove high-end frequencies, or increase those. It allows you to manipulate whatever you need to manipulate to get the best results out of whatever you recorded. So the last effect we're going to go over today is the Deesser, and this one's also built into Fairlight. And the Deesser basically is named for exactly what it does. It de-esses your audio. It takes the S's, any harsh S's from speech, out of your audio. So depending on the environment you recorded in, the microphone you used, or even the EQ treatment that you put on it in post-production, all of those things could contribute to stronger S's or weaker S's. And if you have a really harsh, annoying S in the audio you recorded, the Deesser allows you to remove that or mitigate it.
Sally sells seashells by the seashore. Sally sells seashells by the seashore.
Now that we've gone over the effects available to us here in the channel strip, let's listen down to some audio that we recorded as examples of things you might run into in your video productions. Right now, we're recording audio inside a crowded public area. All right, so a clip like that is an example of something you might run into when you're shooting and getting audio on location for something like a documentary, or just if you're in a place where you need to get the audio on site, but you don't have a lot of control of what's going on around you. So let's take a look at what we did to get the most out of this first audio clip. So I'm going to go ahead and open the dynamic section and turn the compressor on. And let's listen to it without the compressor first and kind of see what we have. Right now, we're recording audio inside a crowded public area. Now we'll turn the compressor on and hear the difference. Right now, we're recording audio inside a crowded public area. In this case, you don't hear much of a difference, but you'll notice at the end where the waveform kind of tails off. With the compressor on, it stays roughly the same level as the louder section, and that's kind of all you really want to do. Compression just helps make the audio sound a little more professional. It helps it stay consistent throughout the entire recording, and for most purposes, that's what you're going to want to try to get out of it. So here the threshold is set to reduce the gain of the louder sections, and you'll see that in the gain reduction meter over here. Right now, we're recording audio inside a crowded public area. And you'll notice in the louder section at the beginning, the gain reduction meter is going down further, and in the quieter section toward the end, it reduces slightly, and it's maybe going down 3/4 of the way. And that means it's doing its job. That means it's making the entire clip sound pretty uniform. We can mess with the threshold real quick just to see what the difference is. Right now, we're recording audio inside a crowded public area. During that section, I reduced the threshold pretty significantly so that it was heavily compressing the entire audio clip. And you'll notice how much quieter it got and how the gain reduction meter went down pretty significantly as the entire piece of audio was playing. That level of compression isn't necessary, so it's tough to explain and it's tough to hear, but as you use it more, you'll get more used to it. You basically just want the compressor to lightly affect the audio in order to get that uniform level throughout. When you're working with your audio and working on the mix portion of it and getting it to sound the way you want it to, you're probably going to want to loop it so that you don't have to manually start and stop the playback on your own. So up here we have the range selector tool, and you can click in front or behind the audio and drag back, and that will set the parameters, the in and out parameters for the loop. And then in order to play that back, you'll hit on a Mac Option /+ right now, and recording audio that will just continue to loop for all eternity until you tell it to stop. So let's take a look at the equalizer, which is playing a bit more of a role in cleaning up this audio. So we'll play it with it off first, and this is with just the compression. Right now, we're recording audio inside a crowded public area. And then I'll turn the equalizer on so you can kind of hear what I did to the audio. Right now, we're recording audio inside a crowded public area. So generally, when it comes to any recorded dialogue, the subharmonic frequencies or the low frequencies don't really play much of a role. That's where you'll get some of your ambient noise, especially your wind noise, your traffic noise, and something that I hear a lot in amateur video productions is audio where the low end was just left in there. And if anyone is listening to this audio and they have a full surround system with a subwoofer, or they're in their car listening and they have subwoofers in their car, that thing's just going to rumble the entire time. And the easiest way to get rid of that, as you can see here, I carved out the low frequencies up to about 115 hertz, and there's no set right or wrong amount of low frequencies that you need to cut out of the audio, but as a practice, I generally cut frequencies up to about 100 hertz because that gets rid of some of the nasty low end that you don't need, and keeps the dialogue intact. So by doing that, you reduce some of the ambient noise, you reduce some of that low end rumble, and you make sure that anybody listening with a subwoofer isn't going to get that annoying whoa, 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 whoa sound that often happens when you don't filter out the low frequencies in your audio. I also did a slight bump here in the equalizer at about 3.5 kilohertz, because that just helps to boost the intelligibility of the speech. Intelligibility in speech usually happens between about 1K and 7K. Some people say it's narrower than that, but there's just a lot going on in those frequencies. And by boosting at about 3.5K, just not very much, you don't have to boost it very much, you'll get a lot more out of the audio, and you'll be able to understand the person much better, and that helps in a situation where you have a lot of ambient noise and maybe the vocal isn't cutting through the way you want it to. That 1 to 7K range is a really great place to start with your equalizer and kind of sweep the frequency around as you're playing it. And we'll do that real quick. Right now, we're recording audio inside a crowded public area and listening back as you're sweeping the frequency around until you kind of find that place that sounds good and the dialogue is coming out more. So right now, we're recording audio inside a crowded public area. And you'll notice if you lift the band here too high, it'll just start sounding strange. So you don't need to boost it very much. You only need to boost it a little bit, and you'll get just a nice little increase in the intelligibility of your vocal. So now we'll go over the third effect on this channel strip real quick, and that's the Deesser. This particular recording was a little bit brighter than the others because we use the built-in microphones on the Tascam handheld recorder, and those seem to give a pretty full range recording. And there's really not that much in this clip that you need to worry about de-essing, but there on the word inside, you'll notice that the S gets a little harsh. Go inside a crowd, and then we flip the de-esser on and play it again. Go inside a crowd. It just reduces it a little bit to make it a little more pleasant to listen to. And the wonderful thing about the DaVinci Resolve de-esser is that we have presets. And presets are your friend. They don't seem to have those on every plugin, but on the Deesser, we do have them, and they're pretty straightforward. Female S, female sh, male S, male sh. Those all occur in slightly different frequency ranges, and these presets kind of are dialed in to target those and reduce them as needed. And in this one, we had a pretty harsh S on the word inside, so I picked male S, and I reduced it a little bit because when I listened back to it, it was kind of ducking the S a little too hard and it sounded unnatural. So it's never wrong or bad to start with a preset. They really give you a fantastic starting point, and then you can adjust from there. And the best thing to do when de-essing a vocal is to just listen carefully and start with a preset that corresponds with either the male or female that you're recording, and move the frequency band around until it sounds natural to you, but it's taking away the S in a way that sounds right. And the de-esser is something you'll see on every clip moving forward, since on a lot of these I added a little brightness to the vocal if the recording was a little dull. And when you add brightness to a vocal using the EQ, you'll a lot of times encounter harsher S's, and the de-esser helps to rein those in. Now we're recording audio outside in a parking lot. So a clip like this is an example of something that you might encounter recording audio outdoors. You're trying to get dialogue on site and it's a windy day or there are a lot of cars going by. That's what this audio is a representation of. So as always, on location, do everything in your power to mitigate that wind noise or ambient noise in your final recording, either by using a windscreen or a dead cat on your microphone. But if for whatever reason the wind noise or ambient noise still creeps in, we'll be showing you some tips in order to reduce that in the final product. So now we'll move on to the parking lot audio clip, and this one was a little more challenging because we had the low end rumble of the wind and also a few passing cars. I'll go ahead and open up the compressor and turn on loop playback. And one thing to take note of in this clip is with the compressor off, the vocal tails off at the end, and so does the ambient noise, but listen to what happens when we turn the compressor on. Now we're recording audio outside in a parking lot. Now we're recording audio outside in a parking lot. So the compressor brings up the overall level of the vocal and helps it to stay consistent, but it also brings up the level of the ambient noise as the vocal gets quieter. So that's just one thing. As you're learning to use compression and you're getting better at it, always keep in mind the overall effect of the compression, because it's not just going to affect what you want it to affect, it affects everything. So as you're bringing up the level of the vocal, you're also bringing up the level of ambient noise. So that's where the threshold controls come in as you set the levels where the compressor will start to work on the audio. That's just a really important thing to keep in mind while you're working with those tools. So we'll go to the EQ on this track, and right now it's off. And once again, I'll play the audio clip with the EQ off, and then I'll flip it on, and you'll hear the difference. Now we're recording audio outside in a parking lot. Now we're recording audio outside in a parking lot. The equalizer on this clip's playing a pretty huge role because we've got some really powerful wind noise that pops in at the front end. And as you can see here, I used band 1 and I cut all of the low frequencies up to about 164 hertz, which is pretty much all of the subharmonic lows, all of the lows. But we don't affect the intelligibility of the vocal there. We're just getting rid of that rumble from the wind noise. So it's difficult to completely remove the sound of wind, but you can really reduce the negative effects that it has on your audio just by using a simple EQ curve, like cutting the low end out of your audio. So also in this EQ, I increased the highs a little bit. The vocal was pretty clear, but this boost up here in the high frequencies really helps just get a little bit of clarity out of it. It's kind of like using the sharpness setting on an image editor or something like that, where if you add a little bit, it can really help bring out some nice details in the image. But if you go too far with it, it could look really crazy and grainy. If you apply that to audio, that's kind of the idea of boosting the high frequencies. Like if it doesn't sound right, it's probably because it isn't. So a little bit goes a long way with compression and EQ. So on this clip, we also use the Deesser because by boosting the high frequencies, we got a little bit of unwanted boost in the S's as well. So I'll play the clip without the Deesser and then I'll turn it on so you can hear the difference. Now we're recording audio outside in a parking lot. Now we're recording audio outside in a parking lot. So the difference isn't huge, but the Deesser is helping to reduce the S in outside, and it takes it from harsh to tolerable. Now we're recording audio inside, but in this clip we captured it with the gain set at a little too low of a level. Okay, so you got your clip. You like everything that you got. The background noise wasn't crazy, but then you get back to where you're doing your editing and you realize that you just didn't record it loud enough. Fortunately, that is not the end of the world. It's pretty easy to gain that up or increase the volume and get it to where it'll work with all the other audio in your production. Now we're recording audio inside, but in this clip, we captured it with the gain set at a little too low of a level. So with this clip, we have this little line right here that's really useful because we can click on it, drag it upward, and increase the gain or volume of this audio clip. So now we'll listen back and we'll hear that now we're at more of an appropriate volume. Now we're recording audio inside, but in this clip we captured it with the gain set at a little too low of a level. So on this clip, as well as many of the other ones, I have some compression to help even out the vocal. Now we're recording audio inside, but in this clip we captured it with the gain set at a little too low of a level. And in this case, the compression brings up the level of the vocal, but also brings out some unwanted hiss in the background. So the equalizer setting that I made for this audio clip demonstrates a notch filter. It doesn't completely get rid of the hiss, but it helps a little bit. So I'll play the audio clip with the equalizer turned on. Now we're recording audio inside, but in this clip, we captured it with the gain set at a little too low of a level. So as with our other audio clips, I've reduced the low frequencies to get out any unwanted ambient rumble or even rumble from the vocal. I've boosted the highs a little bit, right around 5K, to bring a little more clarity to the vocal and a little more intelligibility. And this notch filter here is isolating a little bit of the hiss and reducing it from the vocal. So I can play it back real quick and manually bring the notch filter up so you can hear the difference that it's making. Now we're recording audio inside, but in this clip we captured it with the gain set at a little too low of a level. So as I brought up the gain on that notch filter, you could kind of hear the background hiss increase and some really unwanted frequencies come in on the vocal. So we'll play it again and I'll sweep the notch filter so you can see how I came to the conclusion that that's where we needed to cut some frequencies out. And you'll hear the audio change pretty significantly as we drag the notch filter and sweep it around on the EQ. Now we're recording audio inside, but in this clip we captured it with the gain set at a little too low of a level. So you could hear right there as we got back to the original position of the notch filter, the hiss really came out. So when I pull that down, it helps to reduce that hiss and bring a lot more clarity overall to the clip. And once again on this one, we use the Deesser since we increased the highs a little bit. You know, you want to mitigate any of the S's that might come through your audio recording. Here again, we're recording audio inside, now with the gain set at the proper level. Okay, so that clip is an example of a recording that you did where everything went right. The levels were correct, there was no ambient noise, everything sounds great, you got what you wanted. I'm just going to be using the tools here in Fairlight, the basics, EQ, compression, Deesser, to help you get the most out of that audio. Here again, we're recording audio inside, now with the gain set at the proper level. So the audio is pretty even to begin with, but the compressor just is on there to help give it that more professional finished sound, and also to even out any peaks that we may not be able to hear very well. So we'll take a look at the EQ on this track, and because this was recorded in an ideal setting with little to no background noise, it's an overall a pretty good vocal recording. We didn't have to do much, we just have to do some of the typical things like reduce the low end in order to clear out any unwanted rumble in the vocal, and we just increased the highs a tiny bit at about 3.5K to bring out some of the intelligibility, and then some of the highs up in the 7Ks to bring out some extra clarity and brightness to the vocal. So we'll listen to that real quick to see the difference. Here again, we're recording audio inside, now with the gain set at the proper level. Here again, we're recording audio inside, now with the gain set at the proper level. So the difference isn't huge, but you can still use EQ to kind of bring out some of the better aspects of an already quality vocal recording. We reduced some of the lows, we brought up some of the highs, and it just brings a lot of clarity to a vocal that's already 90% to where we want it to be. All right, guys, hopefully you're able to find these techniques useful. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.